So hello everyone and good morning. Thank you very much for joining our SAP Customer Data Platform session. We have some very exciting and cool stuff for you today. We'll start with kind of like a short video to kind of like get everyone psyched and excited regarding this amazing product. Then we'll do a bit of review in high level, kind of like tell what is in store. Guy Kronenthal, the head of Customer Data Cloud, was also supposed to be here, but he couldn't. So that I'll fill in for him a bit. So we'll start with this a bit more general review and see how this product kind of is such a crucial part in the solution of the intelligent enterprise vision that SAP helps you achieve, and then afterwards we'll dive into the actual workshop, which will take the what we call a business unit in CDP and start to implement all the capabilities and integrations inside of it and see the actual value that we can get. So let me just refer you to the GitHub repository that this session has. This is what I'm looking at right now. I would suggest to already start by cloning it. Notice that because it has a Git submodule, that it needs to be cloned recursively. This is how you're going to do it and exactly how you need to install everything. Please make sure that you have Node.js installed so you can use npm, the Node Package Manager, in order to install the dependencies. In addition, notice that we have a spreadsheet over here that we have a link that if you access it, then you will find a list of like test environments that you can assign yourself to, just to make sure that you have your own kind of like business unit to put all the configuration in, and no one and we won't step on one another. And that is it. If there is any issue, then you can write it in the chat and we'll try to help. And that's it. So let's get to it. Let's start with this cool video.
How do breakthroughs happen? Throughout history, we've combined experiences, data, and innovation to create them. Once they started, they couldn't be stopped. No matter the region, no matter the challenge, breakthroughs grew more diverse, more powerful. With increasing vision, connectivity, and worldwide impact. So what does this mean for your business? Now, innovations are intelligent, customer experiences are limitless, and data is exploding. How can you harness it all to make every customer engagement personalized and relevant? How can you win their loyalty when one bad experience can drive them away? It's time for the SAP Customer Data Platform. Unify all online and offline data sources to create the ultimate customer data foundation for unlocking hidden revenue opportunities. Respect the purpose of customer data to build trust and address data privacy requirements. Activate rich customer insights to deliver hyper-personalization that increases acquisition and loyalty. It's time to tap the power of innovation to fuel every customer experience with trusted, accurate customer data. It's time to break through with SAP.
Cool. So that was kind of like our opening shot. Let's start talking about exactly what SAP CDP is. So let me start my slides here and we will start reviewing it. So first of all, let's start with why, like what exactly, what is the problem that we're trying to solve here, and what is needed here. Let's start with the why. So the customer evolution is here, and we know that getting to know our customers is kind of like the key feature in probably everything that we want to do around our business. We need to be able to engage in a personalized way. We need to know exactly when. We need to create a relationship that is based on trust, and so we actually engage the customer according to her or his terms, and in order not to make anything harm that relationship and that trust. Only then we will be able to kind of like push the sale through. So and yeah, so this is like very in order to get all of these aspects, this is a big part of what we like to call the intelligent enterprise, where we can get all of these we can get all of these all the data that is relevant in order to do that in one single place. But today there are a lot of data silos because we have systems, we have um, great systems that tackle each of the domains that we usually see around the customer. We have a commerce system, we have an identity management system, we have a CRM, we have a marketing system, etc., etc. And because of that, we have a lot of silos, and it's hard to keep them all consistent and have the same data about, when a brand knows me, Baryo, as a customer, I expect it to be consistent regardless of the platform, and that and for that brand to be able to manage it intelligently and get all the relevant insights that it can get in order to engage me in the right way. Let me kind of like get, so when we're talking about getting to know a customer, then obviously we're starting with CIM system, the digital identity. Then we're going through ECPM systems and with consent management, and we're starting to talk about data unification and getting actual insights on top of that. And I think that eventually what we understand regarding the what we would expect from customer data maturity is to be able to unify it all and have like a very like hyper personalization of the interaction that we get from the data that comes from all of these silos. So just to give an example, we have like first party data, second and third party data, and we also need to take into mind that there are customers that we do know, some customers that we don't, and they're all operating under the different channels that our brand exposes. And what we expect is to bring them all into one unified customer profile that from which we can interact with using hyper personalization and create these trusted relationships that I mentioned. Let's keep going. So CDP, Customer Data Platform. So CDP comes to tackle all of these problems. It comes to unify the data from all of these systems, and in an easy way that you can get like real-time insights, but still never compromise regarding the actual privacy and the data governance that we expect to have. Especially well today, with GDPR and other regulations. So let's talk a bit more into depth about what we actually bring in our customer data platform. So first of all, probably the most important thing is that CDP is a system that exists in the middle of the different products that you have in the organization. So first of all, we need to talk about how we connect to those silos. Once we get the data from them, we now understand. We need to understand that that a customer from one system is the same at another system, and then we need to start creating these insights on top of that, because once we bring all this data into one platform, we can get we can understand things that are kind of like bigger from the sum of their parts. We need to do it all and still respect, the data privacy and the consents that consents for which purposes the customer has granted. And assuming all of these, we now can start engaging and doing personalization for the customer. So if we're talking about consent, I mentioned a lot of different systems a lot of different data sources that should come into the customer data platform, and from there go through this ingestion process, which can be, in real time or in batch. And assuming data privacy helps to kind of like create a standard unified customer profile that is built from all of these data sources, and also assuming that things can change. We can understand that someone we thought two customers that we assumed that were different because they arrived from two different systems, maybe they're the same user and we need to merge them. And this needs to be done. We validate, resolve, and enrich in order to get there. And I think one of the key features that we have in our product is that it is really a low code, no code solution for the connectors, for how you actually get the data, and we will see it in the workshop soon, and for configuring everything else. So that is regarding the connect. If we'll talk about understand, every customer does activities that when interacting with a brand. It can be, web. It can be like client interactions while I log in, or I click on a product, or I add something to my cart. It can be that I call the support line, or a sales representative approached me, and from this activity, we want to create these what we call activity indicators, which are basically aggregation of those activities. And on top of these, we can create these insights of dynamic segmentation, which we can then kind of like drive our whole engagement processes on top of, whether it's audience or customer journeys that we will see soon. Well, respect, obviously, very important, but I think I said enough about that. Maybe this slide is worth noticing that, when we are talking about privacy, when I give consent to use my email, for example, it really depends on the purpose of to use it for what. Like, I can say it's fine that you will use my email in order to contact me, if I forgot my password, but I don't want you to contact me regarding marketing, right? So when we say respect, it's exactly to take these consents and bind them to the actual, to the outbound data governance, like how we govern the data when we try to use it in order to activate different outgoing processes and customer engagement. So when we talk about engagement, we're talking about two types. We're talking about audience activation. When we say audience activation, it's basically say I want to take a specific audience from my customer base and set a couple of actions that I want to engage with them. Like, for example, I want to start an email campaign to them, or I want to send them a coupon, or I want to see how I can increase their satisfaction, or to run this metrics over them. And while audience is kind of like something that is scheduled, we talk a lot about personalized journeys, which are more real time, and see how we can engage the client, while he's while he's talking with us, right? Like he a customer does something in the website, we want to send him an email. He purchased something, we want to send him a coupon. So these are what I talked so far, kind of like the you know the key concepts that we have in CDP. I think it's also worth mentioning that regarding the scale of what we work with. So you know, in general, the customer data platform is a product that that was developed within customer data cloud, formerly known as Gigya, and the original product that Gigya had, which was in the identity management domain, proved to be something that is very robust, very like scale, very mature regarding the scale and how it can support um, big load, and the same lessons that we learned from that product is what we based the customer data platform on top of. So we have the concept of multi-tenancy, where we have workspaces and business unit that kind of like contains the data, but still we're a true SaaS solution over a cloud. So we have like maximum optimization using our cloud vendor, while still keeping maximum security and sandboxing between each of the our containers, which are called business unit. I think the low code, no code configurations that we have is really something that at least I'm personally proud of. Like, I think everything regarding integration is so complex, but the flows that we'll see in a second kind of try to really simplify it and make it something that even a non-technical person can really understand quick and without having to learn a lot of new concepts. And the last point that is something that is very important in general, I guess, is that you need to be able to extend, like, probably every step of the way. You want to be able to say, okay, I want to bring my own custom logic here, and this is really part of the perception here. Let me skip on that. Example use cases will have a demo. So that is it for the presentation. Let me just mention, just as a final note, that SAP customer experience in general really comes to aid in resolving the friction of onboarding customers, and specifically the Gigya products, the customer identity access management, the ECPM solution, and now also the CDP. They, like, we'll see in a second how they all come together, give you like this really smooth experience in integrating these processes in order to just optimize the relationship that you have with the customer. So let me show you something that I really quickly drafted, because I think the best way to emphasize to see that we understand something is just to make it really simple. So just putting aside the whole bombastic slides, let's take something that, like, a simple flow that customer data platform should solve. So assuming we have a customer, and the customer works with a certain brand, and as we just talked, that brand can have a lot of different systems behind, like identity management or commerce, CRM, marketing, feedback, and etc. And as we mentioned, each of these systems kind of acts as a silo, and they don't really know, while they do they take their domain and can do great flows in it, they're still mostly acting inside of it. What we get from customer data platform is that we can connect and send these data events, things that happen in these systems into one platform. And because we can now match them all together, we can create these insights that we can now understand something that we couldn't understand until we brought all this data in. Example that I always like to bring is that, let's say that in the identity system, I know that Baryo lives in Tel Aviv, and the commerce system tells me that he just purchased an iPhone, and the CRM system tells me that he called the support line in order to say that that something is not working right. So now I can get an insight that Baryo is a frustrated iPhone customer from Tel Aviv, which I couldn't say until I got all this data into one place. And because now I have this insight, I can now also create the engagement where I trigger an action to another system, such as the marketing system, and I engage the customer directly using the best practices offered there. And all this process, all this flow need to put respecting the customer privacy in the middle. And this is exactly what we do in our platform, where everything regarding data governance is what we call a first-class citizen in our solution. Okay, so with that, let's go to the actual demo. So I hope that you got and cloned the repository and install all the dependency. Basically, the place that you should get to, if I'll open the solution here locally, is that you have the project here, the repository here, and a submodule that is being cloned together with the repo is for a repository called shopping cart app. I'll just show you, because when I'm preparing this workshop, I looked for some very simple commerce system just to show how easy it is to get all our integrations in. And I found one. You can actually go to the actual to the fork that I've made and see that and see where I forked it from. So all the credit goes to the original guy that wrote it. And I just tweaked a couple of things, like first of all, I created a very simple backend to get some of the products. I just did SSL, so we can do it over HTTPS, but really simple things. So basically, we're starting at a very simple solution. If you successfully installed and run everything, then you should see, like, you should have the website, and you also should have a server that is running on port 3001. The Angular project, the front-end project, runs on port 8000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a very simple domain called cdp.vcap.me. cdp.vcap.me, if you just ping it, cdp.vcap.me, this is basically just localhost, right? Just so we'll have some domain to work with, but imagine that this is just simply my brand. When you first go into it, you'll probably get a certificate warning. You can just ignore it and just trust the certificate. It's a local one, and go inside the site. And you're supposed to see something that looks like this. Simple commerce site. We have some logo. We have some products at the bottom that we can see. I can click see more, and see other products here that I can interact and add to my cart. Very simple thing. But this is where our journey starts, right? Like, we want to start by adding functionality and being able to know our customers better. And the journey for each customer that arrives to our brand is as an anonymous customer. And that will be our first exercise in the in this workshop. You can find all the exercises under the exercises directory, and we'll start with exercise 1. Exercise 1 is getting insights on an anonymous customers, and for that we will, we will start working with our CDP system. So I mentioned before, you can also see it in the README with the requirements that there's um, that we have here the spreadsheet that I can that we can assign uh, um, which business units we want to use. So I already run ran this demo a couple of times, but I will use the business unit TechEd 1, and I'll show you how to access it. So basically, there's a link here called universe.cdp.gigya.com. I'm going to uh, open the link for it. Now, let me copy it and open it in incognito, so we'll have something brand new. Okay. And here I'm going to log in with the details that we see here. Like there's a teched1 at test.com. So this is what I'm going to put, teched1 test.com. I'll log in. Say the password is the same. And just a sec, that's what happens when you're working on a browser with that you do a lot of tests before. And then I just log in and I'm connected. You might, just to make sure that you're working on the right business unit for the workshop and you're not kind of like overlapping with someone else, make sure to click on this, what we call the business unit picker on the top right. And according to what it says on the spreadsheet, pick the relevant workspace and your relevant business unit. So I'll be working with TechEd 1. So now that I switched to it, you can see that I don't have any data at all. This is a brand new business unit that I can now start configuring and see and get everything that I need. So let's start with start trying to understand a bit what's going on here. So when we're talking about customer data platform, the first thing that we usually talk about is how will the customer data actually will look like? Like what is the unified profile that we keep mentioning? So to start understanding how that looks, we'll go into the navigation bar on the left, and we'll see that there's an option here called Customer Schema. When we get here, we'll see that we can see the schema of the customer profile. So every customer that will be created in CDP will comply to this structure. It doesn't mean that every customer will necessarily have all these fields, but if it will have data, it will comply to this. So while the profile, each customer profile is what I like to call a mutable record. We can edit it, we can change it. We can add, if I have different emails or different phones, then this is something that I might want to add to. There's a different concept which we call activities. I mentioned it before, that exist in parallel to the customer profile. So in a similar way that a customer has a profile, it will also have different types of activities. So currently we have a built-in activity called the orders. These are the orders that the customer does. But to emphasize, we said that we want to start talking about what an anonymous user does. And probably an anonymous user doesn't order just yet, but usually does maybe, he does cart work. He adds things to his cart, and that could be an interesting, we can create interesting insights on top of that once that anonymous customer will become a known customer. So in order to create these insights, we first need to save the data. So let's create a new activity. We'll go here on the left, click here and create new activity. Let's call this activity cart, right? We'll give it a nice color and we'll give it the cart icon. I'm skipping on the descriptions, but feel free to put anything here. And from now, we want to describe how each activity will look like. So here we'll keep it simple. Let's say that each thing I like in my cart, I can put a product, which is just a string field. You know what? Let me. It's the first time that we see this screen, so I'll say a couple of things about it. We can choose the data type, right? Like what exactly, how exactly we expect it to be saved. We can give a display name and description, which can help us later on to explain what this field is. And we have different tabs of validation and normalization that can help us make sure that the data is according to our requirements. You know, it's formatted correctly, or it's trimmed, or without white spaces, etc. But for now, we'll keep it simple. So we'll add a product field for our cart. We'll also add a category, which will be a string as well. And let's also add a date, like when exactly did I did that. So yes, so this is our cart activity. Now, an important thing to know about activities is that, as I mentioned before, profile is sort of a mutable record, which we can update. Activities are more like an event log, right? Like in each record we create is immutable. So if we'll get data that is sent into CDP and is mapped, as we will see soon, to the cart activity, each time a new event will arrive, a new actual record of the cart activity will be created. We'll see it in a second, then maybe it will be a bit clearer. But this is basically everything that we need for the cart activity. So great, let's save it. So now let's start to talk about integrating with our beautiful website. And in order to start talking about integration, we need to start talking about connecting. And in this case, we care about data sources. Sources are what we call, when we talk about connectivity, we talk about application. Each application is an integration with CDP. A source application is an integration that sends data into CDP. So as you can see now, I don't have any existing applications. So let's connect one. I'll click on the connect. And here we get to what we call the application library. And these are the types of applications that we can create. As you can see, like we have a lot of different connectors that we can use. We'll talk about some of them soon. But for now, I want to start about something that is a bit more generic, and we can find it in the custom applications section, which is a web client application. A web client application simply allows me to send web client events directly from the browser to CDP. Simple as that. So let's connect it. So we'll give it a name. This is my commerce website. I'll skip the description. We have a concept of data quality, but basically I'll just mention it in a sentence. You know, we have a way to say that some applications can produce data that is in higher quality, and this should be and we take that into mind when merging the data together. I won't go too much into it right now. We'll just keep it as normal, but you know, FYI. Categories, commerce. I don't really need a logo. I want it to be activated. And as we mentioned before, this application will run over CDP dot, oh, you know what? CDP dot vcap dot me. Let's delete everything so it will just be a domain. We'll add it and create the application. Great. This is our first application. And as we can see, there are no events here. So let's start by creating one. Um, by the way, if I'm moving too fast, I'll just mention that we have a lot to cover, and everything that I do is actually written in each of the exercises. There's a walkthrough with bullets that describe what I'm doing. We now got here. We're creating a new web client event, and we're going to call it on add to cart. So I clicked on create new event. Let's give it a name, on add to cart. This is the first party CRM data. And currently we see something about purposes here. We will ignore it for now. Let's click next. The next thing that we need to do is to define what is the model of the event, the model of or the schema. Um, and you can see that we already have some built-in fields here. I'm going to add two more that might sound familiar, like the product. What was the product that actually added to the cart? And another one, which we'll call category, the category of that product. Um, I'll just mention, because this is, it's a technical workshop, that our schemas are based on our models and schemas are based on the global standard that of JSON schema. We can switch here to the to the JSON view, and for those of you who are more acquainted with that, you can see that this is just a standard JSON schema that we have a lot of different systems that can produce this standard when integrating with them. And so we do bring this low code, like no code solution here, but if you need advanced customization, that you can do it here. And in general, if you can get the JSON schema from the target system that you're working with, you can just import it, simple as copy paste, and get the entire schema. I'll stick with the low code solution. This will be enough for me, and I'll move to the next step. So the mapping. So this is a screen with a lot of things that we can notice. So first of all, on the left, we have the event schema. The event schema is exactly what we just defined. On the right, and kind of like what takes the most of the real estate in this screen, is what we call the customer schemas. Now, the customer schemas are what describe the customer. So as we mentioned before, it consists of a profile schema. Well, I didn't mention it just yet, but we also have privacy. We'll get to it a bit later. And we have the customer activities that, as we defined before, we have orders and we have the cart activity. What I'm interested in for this event is that to map the product and category and time to date to the cart activity. What you can see, it's just a simple drag and drop. You can see that the chips are on the right that mentioned that these are mapped. I can also see them here exactly, which target field these source fields are mapped to. And I'll also just mention, because it is important, that when we are mapping to the customer schema, we need to be able to understand according to which field we're going to resolve and understand to whom, to which customer this data belongs to. So if I'll expand the profile schema again, you'll see that we have this identifier that is called GMID on the customer schema that is mapped to an identifier on the customer schema that is called device ID. So when we're talking about anonymous users, we don't have any way to actually identify them other than assuming that this web client event was we assigned the device ID, and we are able to track the different events that are reported from it using this device ID. We can see that this field acts as an identifier because it has the key icon next to it. Notice that there's also something that is called view, which mentions the unified customer profile and the contextual profile. These are really interesting topics. I won't touch them for now. We will mainly focus on what we call the unified customer profile. But if we'll have some time at the end, I can share a bit more regarding that. So with that, we're pretty much done with our mapping. So I'll just do next. And look at here. I now have the actual snippets that can tell me what do I need to do in order to integrate this the reporting from my web client. So I need to do two things. The first thing I need to do is to load the SDK into my website, which is simple enough. So I'll just click here, copy the snippet. Let's go back to WebStorm. And the best place to just load an SDK is go to the index.html in the source directory. And we'll just paste it here under the head. So let me just simulate it again. I went uh, um, to the shopping cart project. I scrolled down under the source directory into the index.html file, and the snippet that I took from the CDP console, I just pasted it under the head. That is it. Now I have the SDK on my page. The next thing that I see that I need to do here is to call this SDK and pass the relevant fields that I configured. Now, this is a bit trickier, but not a lot trickier, because it requires me to first see how I'm going to use this SDK inside my Angular project. And second, to understand exactly where do I need to call this method. So in this boilerplate code, I already prepared something that is simple. Well, this doesn't really require us to know to have previous understanding of Angular, but for some of you that do have, I just want to show it quickly that we have something in Angular. Dependencies are managed in modules, and we have like this shared module. And I defined under the providers, which are the services that this front-end app has, I defined another provider, another service that basically means that when I request Gigya CDP, I will get whatever is in the window.cdp. You can see that this field correlates with what we saw here, which we actually put the SDK on. So because I did this, now all that's left is to actually use this SDK. So for that, we have another service that is called the report service. Let's go to it. Report service. Cool. So we can see that the report service is a very simple service. There's nothing here. It's just a class, constructor, and two stubs of methods with no implementation. So now we want to start implementing the on add to cart. In order to do that, we first need to have the SDK at hand, right? And as we saw before, we defined it as part of the module dependencies. So we can ask to inject it to the constructor. This is done, again, this is a bit of Angular syntax. I can decorate and say that I want to inject the Gigya CDP. Here I will get, I'm defining a private member that is called CDP. And I will define its type. This is something that is also in the documentation of the SDK, that it has a very simple method that is called report, which receives two parameters: the event name, which is a string, and the payload, which is just an object. This report function doesn't return anything, and that is it. This is like we defined the dependence, we requested this dependency, and now it's accessible within the service. So on the on add to cart, we can actually use the SDK, and we will do that. Let's go back to the console and copy this snippet, the second one. I'll go here and I'll paste it. So obviously there's no CDP, but we just defined it that it exists on this class's instance. So I can do this dot CDP, and now I have report. Now we can see that I have an error because I don't provide the second parameter. Now the second parameter I already receive as a receive it in here in the function. So let's just delete it, write the name of it here, and this is it. Remove this comment. Perfect. We have reporting on adding to the cart adding to cart. Sorry, let's rename this on add to cart. Yeah, I had a typo, so it's on add to cart. So let's continue to the next question is where am I going to use this method? So let me introduce to you another service, another Angular service here, which is called the products service. The product service is a simple one. Well, it has a couple of things, but basically it manages the products. And I'll just, I'll search for cart. And I see that there are a couple of methods that refer to cart. Luck has it, and we have the add to cart here. Let's see how it's implemented. It has a lot of different functionality. We don't really care about all of that, so I'll just add here in the middle. I want to use the report service and say and report about this product that was added to the cart. So basically, I need the report service that we just configured. So in Angular, again, every time we need something, we just inject it. So here I will just define another private member report service, which is the report service. Now I have access to it, and in the actual code, I will do this dot report service and say on add to cart. Now here I need to provide a payload which consists of the product and the category. So let's create a new object literal and fill the missing details. So where do I get it from? Well, I see that the parameter that is called data is of type product. So let's see what it actually has. I see it has different properties. Well, product name is actually exactly what I need, so let's use it. The other field that I need for this payload is the category. Let's do the same thing. Product category. Thank you, intelligent development environment, for suggesting exactly what I need. So this is basically it. Like this is reporting, like creating the actual integration to CDP and doing the actual report. Amazing. Before we actually check this, I want to do some more configuration on the CDP side, so we'll have some cool things to look at when we'll test that. And for that, I want to introduce to you to two new concepts in CDP, which we call in general the CDP insights. Like these are the insights that we can create on top of the data that is sent to CDP. So the first one will be activity indicators. In order to do that, let's finish the setup here. And we can see that we have like a valid on add to cart, but forgive me. And we'll go to on the left navigation panel, we'll go to activity indicators. So what are activity indicators? Activity indicators are basically aggregations that can be done on top of activities. For example, we see that we already have a couple of built-in activity indicators, which are the total orders that the customer has done and the total spend that the customer spent. I want to do something that is very similar, but I want to understand if a customer is really loves shirts. I have a lot of things that he can add to my cart. I want to see if he really likes shirts. So let's create a new I want to count how many shirt items were added to the cart. So let's first create a new indicator on top of the cart activity. When we go here, we see that we need to fill a couple of details. The first one is the name of this indicator. Let's give it a simple name, favorite shirt count, something like that, or shirt count. What we want to do here regarding the calculation method, I want to just count. So I'm going to drag the entire activity here to the calculation method, and I'm going to choose from the the number of um, sort of aggregation that I can do just to count the card activity. If I would want to do something else, like minimum or maximum, then I would use one of the fields probably. But for now, count is enough. But I don't want to take all the cards, all the entries in all the activities. I want to filter them according to the category. So here I want to take only the category that is defined, that the category is t-shirts. Okay. Notice that it has a capital T. It's also written in the exercise file. It's case sensitive, so just make sure not to forget about that. Basically, this is it. Let's save it. And now we have a new indicator that counts the number of shirts that a customer added to the cart. This is cool, but it's just a simple aggregation. It's not something that is more business oriented. So that leads us to the next topic, which is segments. Really close to where activity indicators are, there are segments. And if we go there, we'll see that we currently don't have any segments at all. So let's create a new one and talk a bit what segments are. Segments are basically kind of like additional fields that can receive different values according to a condition. So let's create a segment called T-shirt lover, and we'll add a new value to it. Once we click the add new value, I can give it a name. So let's say that the first value is enthusiast, and the condition in order to say that this customer is enthusiastic regarding t-shirts, that we'll use this indicator that we created. I'm going to drag and drop it here, and I'm going to say that if the t-shirt count is greater than 5, then you're an enthusiastic t-shirt lover. Let's add another value, which just you don't have to be really enthusiastic about t-shirt. You can just be a fan of it, and we'll do pretty much the same thing. We'll drag and drop the same indicator field, but we'll say that in order to be a fan, you just need to have more than to add more than 2 shirts to your cart. That is it. Let's save it. And we see that we now have a new segment for the t-shirt lover. So we've done a couple of things. We've created a new web client application. We've created a new web client event. We integrated that web client event into our website. And on top of the activities that will be created from these events, we are now, we've created an indicator, an activity indicator. And on top of that, we've created a segment that can actually tells us something about that customer. So let's start to see this in work. Let's go back to our shopping cart, and just to see that everything works, I'll open the DevTools, put the I'll refresh the page. I'll put the console. Never mind the error; it's not really important. But we can see that under window we have the CDP SDK. Everything is loaded correctly. So now we can just play with it. So what I'm going to do is I just got into the site and I really love I'm really interested in that single. So I'm reading about it and I want to add it to my cart. So I clicked and added this to the cart. Now, now let's go back to the CDP console, right? And here, let me introduce to you to another screen, which is called the customer search. If I'll go on the left, we'll see that above segments, we have the search. And if I'll go here, we'll see that now I have a new unknown customer. This is a customer that I pretty much don't know anything about because he's anonymous. If we'll go into his details, we'll see that everything is pretty much empty. Notice that there's another tab here called the Activities tab. If I'll go here, you'll see that we have one cart activity that was created because of that web client event that we did. And if we'll scroll a bit down, you'll see that there's an indicator here that while it counts the number of things in the cart, it's not the number of t-shirts that I just put. So let's try to make our user someone who loves shirts a bit more. So let's go back to the products, and I see a t-shirt that I like. I'll click on that, and I'll add it to my cart as well. Let's go back to the products, and I see another shirt. Let's take this and add this to the cart as well. So now I have 3 items in my cart, right? I have the regular, the music single, and 2 shirts. If I'll go back to the customer search, now I will refresh the page. And with the help of the demo gods, we'll see that we now have 3 cart activities. And if we'll look down to the indicators, we'll see that while I did get 3 cart activities, I am only counting 2 for my favorite, for the shirt counter. Now, this is interesting because if you remember, we defined a segment that will start taking a value only if we pass the 2. So let me introduce to you another tab, which is called the Details tab. And we can see that we don't really know anything about this customer except his device ID. And you can see that the segment membership is empty. So what we'll do now is I'll just add another shirt here that is reported to the CDP, and once it's being processed, it should take the activity count now from 2 to 3. So let's refresh the page again. And we can see that we got to 3. And now we'll move to the Details tab. And we can see that I'm in this segment of T-shirt lover. I'm a fan. But you know what? I'm really enthusiastic about T-shirts. So let me go back to the products. And I saw another T-shirt that I really love. And I'm going to add not 1, but actually 2. 2 new T-shirt. You know what? 3. So now an additional 3 events are sent to the CDP system. And if we'll go back here and I will refresh the page, hopefully they'll be done with ingesting. And we can see that now I'm enthusiastic of T-shirts. Something weird to be enthusiastic about, but fun nonetheless. Cool. So this is like we did. We met a couple of new concepts in this exercise. We saw we first saw the CDP console, Then we saw the profile schema. We learned what activities are. Um, we saw what is the activity indicators that we can build on top of the activities, and segments that we can build on top of these indicators. And we saw how we're integrating a web client application in order to start getting client-side data into the CDP and start seeing things about, start collecting data about anonymous users. So this wraps up the first exercise of this workshop, and now we can continue to the next one, which is kind of like built in on top of this and makes things much more interesting. So let's go here, and we'll go to exercises, exercise 2, and switch to this view. So now we want to see how we're converting anonymous users to be known. So let's take this aside and start seeing what we're going to do. I heard that there's a missing file regarding the credentials of the Woocommerce. So let me share it with you. I put it in git ignore. I'll take this JSON. I'll paste it in this sheet where we assigned the business units. So you can just create a file that is named. Yeah. So just create a file that is named woocommerce.cred.json. Put this content there and put it in the same directory as the server, in the server directory. Cool. Okay, so let's continue if there's no other issue. We'll continue by, we want to start identifying when a user logs in order to utilize a CIAM solution, which we will use SAP Customer Data Cloud. Gigya is also known as Gigya. We'll put it in. The first thing that we will do in order to start integrating with it is to extend our current application, our current web client application, that will just notify us that there was a login event. So I went back to the sources under the menu, and here I see the Woocommerce website application that I created. I'm going inside of it. I see the event that I already defined, and I'm going to define another one. So I'm going to click on the create new event. And here I will give it the name of on login. And again, I'm going to just skip the rest of the fields. And in the actual model or schema, I'm going to add another field, a field that is called CIAM ID, or or identity ID, or customer identity access management ID, which is basically the identifier that the system that is actually managing the identity will be using. So I'll just add this field and click on next. And here I will map this CIAM ID into another field that have the same name. So basically here, we don't have a lot of interesting mapping going on, but there is a key concept here that I want to introduce to you. There's, as I mentioned before, each field here with the key icon acts as an identifier. Now this event, because it can bring two fields that are considered as identifiers, can basically get the two customers that were previously unrelated. We can now understand that they're one user. So the flow will be that I have client-side events that were reported with the device ID. This is what we've seen so far. The next step we're going to do is to integrate with the Cim system, which will send us events directly, not from the browser, but directly from the Cim servers that will arrive to CDP and will consist of the Cim ID. The purpose of this event is is to be able to connect these two the customers that arrive from these two different applications, to merge them together, because we now understand that they share these identifiers. So I'm going to click on next, and again I have the code that we're already familiar with. So I already loaded the SDK, so it's not really I don't need to do it again. What I am interested in is on reporting the on-login event. So I'll copy this snippet. I'll go back to WebStorm, to my IDE. I'll go back to my report service. And here we see that there's already a stub for on-login that expects to receive a user. I'm going to just paste the code that I copied. I'm going to do the same thing, going to just replace the CDP in the one with the state of the service. And here we see that the we get an object for the payload, but it's empty, the CIMID. So let's look at the user object, what I have here. And I see that I have all kind of different fields. I can tell you that what we are interested in is the dollar key. So we'll just assign this into the CMID, and that is it. We're done with wrapping how we're going to call the reporting of this event. So the next thing is to start integrate the Cim system into my website. Now, I'm going to kind of go briefly on that. It's also a simple integration. It's mostly regarding the CIAM product. I think there's another separate workshop on that, but that maybe will put more emphasis. But let's do it quickly. Well, the first thing that I need to do in order to start integrating with it is to create an application. So until now, we only had the commerce website application, but now I want to connect to another one. So I'll click the connect application on the top right. And here I will look for Customer Data Cloud. And I see a connector that exists here at the bottom. So I'll click on connect, and I'm going to put the details. So this is my Cim system. I want it activated. And here I need to put authentication details. Now, I already created the relevant configuration. It exists in the exercise file that it's in the repo. So I'm just going to copy and paste the relevant configuration, user key, secret, API key, and the API base URL. Great, I'm going to create it. So what's different with this application comparing to the web client one? Web client one is something that is very generic because every site has its own set of events. But for systems that are based on kind of like real concrete connectors, real connectors, we can already provide the best use cases that you can get from that system. So here we see that there are two events that the Cim system can bring regarding what we call a full account or a light account. Currently, we won't talk about what light account is. We'll just treat as a full account as the usual user. And we'll go in configuring it. So I'll click on the three-dotted menu. I'll click on edit, and let's start to write things down. So we can skip on most of the fields and go. I don't need to change here anything. regarding the schema is already prepared, because this is the data that arrives from Gigya, from Customer Data Cloud. So I can go directly into the mapping. The mapping, I'll map the data that I care about. So let's do mapping of the first name, of the last name. Let's also get the email. I'll search for it here. And we also need the CIAM ID. The CIAM ID is basically the UID or the unique ID that exists here. Notice to use the one that is outside of the profile. This is the more global one. So we'll just map it to the CIAM ID field. Great. Let's go to the next step. This is all we care about. We don't care about activities here, so we'll just continue. Here, we'll see that there's a polling configuration. Now, this is a good time to mention that, when we're talking about getting data from another system, there are two strategies that that can be used, and this is basically according to what that system exposes. So there's here I wanted to focus on an example where the target system, we can fetch data proactively from it. So basically, there's an endpoint behind the scene that Gigya CIM exposes, and we're now configuring the scheduling that CDP will go and pull the data from. Now, because this is user data, I want it to be very fast. So I'm going to say start it from right now, and I want every minute to poll for new users that will go into CDP. So because this is an existing instance, then we might see that events are starting to come, existing instance of the CIM, we might see that events and customers are already begin to arrive. But let's start talking about integrating it in our website. So the next step, and as I mentioned, I'll kind of go briefly on it. We need to add the Ciem Sdk, which can bring us the front-end experience of registration and login. So I'm going to do something that is very similar. I'm going to go to the index.html, and I'm going to copy and paste the script tag, the following script tag. Just paste it under. Notice that there's a parameter here called the API key. Replace, I think this is an old API key, so let me delete it and use the API key that is mentioned in the exercise file. You see there's an API key here. We need the same one. So I'm copying it and just pasting it under the API key script. This is it for getting the Gigya CIM SDK on the page. And I can tell you that as part of the setup, I created also something very similar to what we did with the CDP, but for the CIM, and we can now inject and get it. So now we have the CIM SDK on the front end. We now want to start using it. So we have a special service here in this boilerplate project, which is called the auth service. If we'll go to it, we'll see that there's a lot of code here, but I just want to focus on a couple of things. The first thing that we care about is to be able to show the registration and login, to show the experience. And in order to do that, we're going to do really simple things. We're going to, first of all, get the Gigya service. So I'm going to go to the constructor here on top. Let's kind of like put it in different lines. I'm going to add another injected parameter, which will be the Gigya SDK. Notice that I'm just giving it a type as any. It has some complex typing, but for now, I'll just use it as you use it in plain JavaScript. So now I have the Cim Sdk accessible, and I can just implement the registration and login. This code you can also find in the exercise file. I'm just pasting it from there. As you can see, it's very simple. Just trying to use the SDK in order to show the screen set on a given starting screen. So I'm going to save. And just to show you what we got, I'll go back to the website. And if I'll click on the sign in and sign up, you'll see that now I get the login and registration experience, and I can switch through with zero effort, just plug and play. Cool. So, but this is just for showing it. I still need to get it to interact with the site. So the next step is to implement what we want to do on login. So let me kind of do it step by step. I'm copy pasting from what you have in the exercise file, and I'll explain it briefly. So I'm pasting the how we on the constructor of this service. We're registering to the events of this SDK, the onLogin event and the onLogout event. Okay. What we can see here that on the onLogin event, we're just doing a refresh for the session, which is a step that we still haven't implemented. And the onLogout is we're setting the user to be an anonymous user. There's in Angular and well, in general, the whole concept of reactive programming or using RxJS is something that's really becomes really popular and very useful and interesting, but it's a complex subject. So pun intended. So I won't get too deep into, well, I won't get deep at all regarding what subject is, but just let's agree that this is how we kind of like setting the user. So this is just about listening, like after showing the screen set and the login experience, this can raise the onLogin event, which will want to refresh the session. So let's start and implement this. This is a bit complex, so let me just copy a lot of code and tell you very shortly what it does. First of all, because it's an external SDK, then we need to hook it into Angular. This is just an aspect, don't think about it. Here we're using the call of the SDK that is for fetching the account info. This is account in the CIM means the actual user info. And here we're trying to see whether or not we actually we're actually connected. If we're not, then we're setting the user to be an anonymous user. If not, then we're creating a new user object with all of these properties. Notice that we referred previously to the $key as the UID or the CIM ID, and this is where it comes from. So this is basically the refresh. The only thing that we're missing is well, we're missing two things basically. First of all, we want to well, I think that because we already have some events that are called isLogin and isLogout, then we will be able to see what happens when we're logging in, but not logging out. Fortunately, logout is really simple, so we'll just go to the logout method and we will put this code here, and this is logout. If we'll take what we've written so far and we'll go to the website, I'll click on sign in. I'll try to log in with a pre-existing user, 88.com. I'll submit, and voila, I'm logged in. You can see that now I can do also log out, and I'm logged out. Great, we've implemented in probably 5 minutes the whole session management of the website. Amazing. So the last thing that we're missing if you remember, because we have a couple of context switches here, but we've implemented the onLogin report that will tell the CDP that we actually logged in from the client side. And we said that this is important in order to make sure that the CIM user that is created in CDP will be linked with the anonymous user that we have in the browser. So here we'll use something that, again, is a bit of RxJS oriented. Let me copy it and put it here. This is basically saying, I want to take the events of when a user changes and when it's logged in. I want to filter it according to when a user is actually logged in. Then I want to take the actual user, and this event I want to subscribe to and say that now I have the user at hand. What I want to do is I want to report it to the onLogin event, but for that I need the report service. So I'll just add it here again, private report service, and now we can do this report service on login, and I just need to pass the user in. That is it. So we finished integrating it. Now let's see it all kind of move together. Yeah, so let's do something like that. Let's do let's open an incognito tab. It's not really incognito, so let me open. Let me open a guest browser and go to this. You know what? Let's do something simpler. Let's go here, go application, and just clear the storage. I'll refresh. And what I want to do is I'm starting as an anonymous user, right? So I'm going to start adding shirts, right? 1 shirt, 2 shirts, 3 shirts, 4 shirts. Now, if you remember, we defined a segment that tells me that I'm I like shirts, right? That I'm a fan. But currently, I'm an anonymous user. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to I want to register. So let's register with a new email. Let's do something random, which is kwewe.a.com. I'll copy this. I'll just fill our random details, and I'll register. Cool. I'm registered and I'm logged in. And now let's go back to the CDP console. Here, let's make sure that this runs. And let's go to the customer search again. Here, I will search for the email that we looked before. Now, I found that user that was created through the CIM. And now if I'll go into its activities, we see, and this is awesome, right? Like we see that there are 4 activities here that were created when this user was still anonymous. Like we started to build our relationship with that customer even before it became a known customer. And if I'll go into the details, I see that it's really in the relevant segment. So imagine that, you know, like the customer just became a known customer, but I can already recommend things to him. So this is kind of like a really amazing thing to have. Cool. So this is closing the second exercise of this workshop, where we're converting a customer um, to be a known one. So the next one is collecting orders. And to collect orders, we need a commerce system that can send us orders. And for that, we need to integrate with, we'll use Woocommerce. Woocommerce, for if someone is not acquainted with it, is a commerce plugin that sits on top of WordPress and pretty much manages everything regarding the catalog and the actual purchases flows that you can do from there. But actually, you know what? Before we could dive into WooCommerce, I want us to experience in that the a couple to start talking about data privacy a bit. I mentioned it before at my opening that how we see that data governance is it's really a first-class citizen in our system. So I want to start talking about what we call processing purposes. So processing purposes, you can find them on the left navigation bar, at the last item called processing purposes. And that is processing purposes allow us to define the purpose for processing data, and also refer what happens with inbound data, with incoming data, whether or not are we okay of saving it for a given customer, and whether or not we can, only if a user gave consent to that purpose, then we can use it for outbound, which is this is called outbound data governance. Like as I mentioned before, if I gave consent to use my email for the to contacting me purpose, it doesn't mean that I'm willing to that you will use my email for the marketing purpose. So this is what we're going to start expressing. So I'm going to create a new processing purpose, and we'll give that purpose the name of service. This will be our very basic processing purpose. You'll notice that we have another field called external ID, and we'll meet this a bit later, but this is basically a way to refer this processing purpose by another system. So we have like an automatically transformation between the external ID and the actual purpose. The processing reason is, well, we'll give it the same currently. The processing reason will be just support. Click it and press enter, and we'll move forward. Regarding inbound data governance, we won't talk about it right now. So I'll move to the third one, which is the outbound data governance, which tells me which fields can I use or not. We will also see it a bit later, but if I'm already here, let me just say that for the service purposes, I'm willing to use all the fields that exist under the profile. So I'll just save it, and we have a new processing purpose. I'm going to create another one. This one time I'm going to call it marketing, and the external ID, we're going to use the external ID that the ECPM system, that the ECPM is the consent management system that exists also as part of the customer data cloud. I just call it there my consent. Yeah, it's a bit generic, but it's what I said. Here we can say that this is for this is just for consent purposes, and when we talk about this purpose outbound data governance, let's say that I only allow to access first name, last name, and primary email. This is for the marketing purpose. I'm going to save it, and I have now two valid processing purposes that I can use. So what I'm going to now try to achieve is how I collect these actual purposes. So let us go back to the source applications that we defined before. And let us go into to the CIEM application that we defined. Here, we'll click on the three-dotted menu for the get full account in batch, and we'll edit it. Now, I want to say that every new account that is created through the CIM will automatically receive the service processing purpose, because this is kind of like part of my terms of service. If I have a user, I assume that they already have they've granted consent for this purpose. So in the granted processing purposes, I'm going to add the service purpose. So this is something that is relatively static. So like every event that comes in will automatically grant this consent. But what about things that might be a bit more dynamic? So let me go to the mapping screen. And in the mapping screen, I'll now talk, I mentioned it before, about the privacy schema. So you can see that under the privacy schema, there are processing purposes and also communication subscriptions. I won't talk about subscription right now, but I will talk about how I map to the processing purposes, which is pretty simple. If I'll go on the left, I will collapse the profile fields and the subscription fields. And we'll see that in the preferences, which is the name of consent, of how consents are stored in CDC, we have exactly the fields that we want. So I'll just map them. External ID to external ID, status to status, date to date. Purpose ID, I don't need, because as I mentioned, because I defined the external ID on the purpose itself, it knows how to convert it to how to find the right purpose from the external ID. So I just enhanced the mapping, so we'll have everything I need regarding this processing purpose. So let's save it and keep the polling the same. Now I want to show you that if I'll go and log out, let's register again. And I'm starting to run out of random email addresses. Let's call it asdasd@8.com and copy it. And you'll notice that in this experience, I have two checkboxes. So as we said, the service purpose, the consent for the service purpose is automatically, but I actually, the get recommendation is in the ECPM product is marked to the external ID of my consent. You know what? Let me show it to you real quick, because I think it's worth noticing. So this is Customer Data Cloud, the CIM product. And inside of here, we have the consent statements. This is the part of the ECPM of the consent management. And you can see here that I defined my consent as part of the consents that are managed here. And if I'll go to we have something here called the UI builder, which is the experience that I just showed you. And I'll go to the default registration login, which, if you remember, is what we set here in the show screen set, the default registration login. Then you'll see that we have, if I'll go to the registration, you'll see that get recommendation is actually mapped to this field, the my consent. And this is the external ID that we defined in CDP. This is a bit long, but let's see it in action. Once I register, let's register and complete my registration. Once I registered and the account is created in the CIM, and now is going to be synchronized to the CDP. As we said, as we've seen before, the customer user that will be synced automatically will get consent for the service processing purpose, but we didn't say anything in the mapping regarding the actual marketing processing purpose. But this comes from the ECPM product, and I won't get too much into it, because again, it's like a session on its own. But there's a lot that you can do regarding consent management, and you should probably do, because it's a very important topic. But you know what? Let's try and see it. So I'll go here. Let's search for the new customer that I've created, and if I'll go to it, Now I'll go to the Trust tab, and you'll see that the service that I do have consent for the service processing purpose, but also for the marketing because I've explicitly granted it. I want to show you another example. Let's log out again and log in, create another user, another and this time I'm not going to check the get recommendation. I'll create the user. Meanwhile, let me just close this. And here, let me go back to the search and paste this email address. You see, it wasn't synchronized just yet. So now if we'll go here to the trust, we'll see that the user has rejected the marketing processing purpose. And this is all managed in the ECPM, which is the source of truth regarding consents, but is now accessible in CDP. And we can see, and later on, we'll see how it's going to be propagated to the rest of, we can propagate it to the rest of this, to other systems. I got a question regarding the code that I'm writing. So first of all, let me just show it. There's especially there was a lot of code in exercise 2. You can actually find all the code in here at the bottom of the page. In addition, I already created branches for this submodule, the shopping cart app, which is called exercise, which I created a branch at the end of each exercise. So you can see a branch called exercise 1. This has all the code that is required after exercise 1. And there's exercise 2, which is after exercise 2. By the way, this is pretty much all the, or at least most of the front-end code that we will write. So back to the processing purposes. Now that we are going to start talking with Woocommerce, Woocommerce will mostly talk with emails. So now we need another way to identify a customer that comes in, because currently we were mostly talking about device IDs and CIM IDs. Now we need another identifier. To do that, we'll go to this to the navigation bar again, and we'll go into the matching rules option. So as I mentioned, matching rules are pretty much the identifiers that we defined in the system. You see that we have a lot of identified users using the CIM ID, and we have a couple of anonymous users using the device ID. What we're going to do now is to create another matching rule. So I'm creating another matching rule. We see a relatively different screen. And now I want to define it over the primary email field. So I'm just going to drag and drop it here. We'll ignore the policy here for now. We'll just do done. And that is it. We have a new identifier. Easy as that. Now that we have this installed, we can start finally talking about WooCommerce. So let's go. We want to define another source of data that we can get the orders from. So we'll go into the sources tab, and again, we'll click on the connect application. Here we'll search for WooCommerce, and we'll connect to it. So this is my WooCommerce application, and this will be activated. And let's talk about authentication. So again, in the exercise file, you have the username and password ready for you to just copy it in. And the API base URL. Paste it here, and we will create this application. Cool. We got a lot of events that I can already start using. Now, if you remember, when we talked about the CIM, we talked that there is a scheduled event that I pull an endpoint for new data. In this application, we have an option for what we call a listener, an event listener. An event listener is mostly waiting to get events. And for that, we need to first complete the configuration of it in CDP, and then make sure that our WooCommerce instance will send the data to it. Now, the as I said, Woocommerce is a plugin on top of WordPress, and we created our own instance of it, and with relatively low resources. So our Woocommerce instance is a bit slow. So we might see some delay in things arriving. I'll try to rush things through because we don't have a lot of time left. But let's start configuring it. So I'm going to edit it. Let's say that if I want, remember when we talked about processing purposes, we said that there's inbound data governance. So here we can say that I don't want to save I don't want to save order data or these events for customers that did not grant me consent for the marketing purpose. So this is where the inbound data governance comes in and helps me to be compliant. So this is it. Let's continue. What we mostly care about is the mapping and the listener. So let's rush this a bit through. What we're going to map here is we mainly care about the email. So let's find the email here. You remember we now made it an identifier, so we can actually map it well here. And what we also care are the actual orders. So I will collapse the profile schema and also the privacy schema. And let's start talking about the activities. And what we care about in activities are the actual orders. Now, just to make things simpler, I'm going to scroll down to where WooCommerce actually brings the orders, which are called line items. I don't really care about a lot of things here. What I mostly care about is the total. Now, notice something weird here because total is, for some reason, the WooCommerce passes it as a string and not as a number, which is pretty much what we would expect. But luckily, this is one of the capabilities that we do have in CDP, which we call transformations. Now, also notice that this field is under an array of objects. I know that it might be not that clear, but once we have this array notation with the rectangular brackets, this means that an event can arrive with multiple entries that each of them will have the total field. So once I'm going to drag it into the orders amount, two things are going to happen. First, I'm going to get prompted that that multiple activities can be created, which is completely fine. I will accept that. Wait just a second. Sorry. Let's restart this. So we have the email into the private email, and we have the orders. Where's the line items? Line items, and we have the total, and we want to put it in amount. I want to say okay, and just a sec. Sorry, I just wanted to show you the transformation, but okay. Sorry for that technical hiccup. What you can see here is that not only we're creating multiple entries in the orders activity, we see that when mapping, we can map this string field into this numeric field. And that is because we have transformations, built-in transformations that can convert from a string to a number. By the way, this can also be further extended using the transformation menu, where we can define different transformation when moving from different field types. I won't get too deep into that, but basically, this is what allows me to create multiple order activities. Now comes the tricky part, that we need to define to tell WooCommerce to actually send the orders to CDP. Here we're going to not use, we're going to use the authentication type via query string, which the credentials pass there, and we're going to copy the webhook URL. What we're going to do here is to go to the WooCommerce website. I'm not going to stop on that because there are the instructions in the exercise file, but basically follow the instructions. You will get into the advanced settings of the WooCommerce system, and there you can see that there are webhooks. As you can see, it's really slow. And I see that someone already created a webhook, and I will create another webhook as well. There was a question before that order to TechEd CP. We'll set it as active. We'll put it as order updated, and we'll put the delivery URL as the one we've copied. Now, someone mentioned also before that you kind of get this error regarding the endpoint returning 400. Here we're getting it again. Ignore that. It doesn't really stops from doing anything. So this is basically it. We configured the webhook, and now we expect it to be sent whenever a new order is created. This pretty much summarizes this event. You can see that it's now active, and we can start getting the orders in. We have like 10 minutes left, and basically we have 2 more exercises that I wanted to also review with you. The 4th exercise is integration with Amarsis. Amarsis is an engagement platform that can manage different campaigns. For example, let me show you. For example, this is the Amarsis dashboard. I can go here into its automated programs, and we can see here, different programs that I defined. There's one that I saved for VIP people called the Paris Street VIP program. And if I'll edit it, we'll see that there's kind of like a couple of steps that can be done. What I wanted to show you in the exercise is how we create a connector from Amarsis in order to get something new that is called an action. Action is how we send data outside of CDP, and how we put it in what we call a customer journey. Customer journey is a way to, let me move to one of the integrations that I already did, and I will already show it how it's ready. So if I'll go here, this is a business unit that I already did the entire setup, and if I'll go to destinations, then you'll see that I have the Amarsis application, and if I'll go into it, you'll see that I have 2 actions. So as we said, actions send data out. So we have the create contact in Amarsis. This is kind of like an action in order to make the system synchronize. And we have the trigger email campaign. Now, these actions can be used in what we call customer journeys, which are basically workflows that can orchestrate, that you can trigger and do decisions according to the customer, and then decide which actions you want to make. So let me just show you an example. So this is the journeys dashboard. If I'll go here to the sync new customers journey, it's a very simple journey that if I'll go to the journey builder just to show you how it looks. It's just a trigger that says, okay, when a customer has been created, please sync it to Amarsis. And this action has a concept that we already saw, the concept of mapping. But that concept is the other way around. If in events we saw how data is mapped from the event to CDP, in actions we will see how mapping go from CDP to the action. You know what? Let's see it really quick. I'll go again to the destinations, to the Amarsis application, to the create contact in Amarsis. I'll edit it. I'll go to the mapping tab, and we'll see that the profile is now on the left, and the schema of this action is on the right, and I'm mapping from CDP to Amarsis. Cool. Another interesting thing that I wanted to show you, I'll go back to the Amarsis application, that I have the trigger email campaign. So this is an action that actually triggers that campaign in Amarsis, which does great work regarding engaging the customer. So I'm defining that this action requires the marketing purpose, because this is the data that is going to go from CDP to Amarsis in that campaign. And we see that there's additional configuration that comes with this action that I need to define. In this place, it's the trigger ID. The trigger ID is, if you remember, we saw it before, is this. You see that we have the Paris Street program. If I'll go to something here called the, where is it? External events. Wait. External event. I'll go to external event and I'll look for the Paris Street VIP. We'll see that this is the number of the trigger. This is this is how Amarsis work. You need to send them kind of like a code to tell them which event that will trigger which automated program. So this is basically it, and the mapping is something that is pretty much similar. This action is will be put in a similar journey that can activate, that we can decide when to activate. For example, according to a segment. Remember, we defined a segment that a person likes. We now identify that a person likes t-shirts. We can we can put a trigger on top of that and say, okay, now I want to start this email campaign. I went over really briefly on exercise 4 because I really wanted to show you something that we have in exercise 5, which is the more technical aspect that we have in CDP. As I mentioned, CDP has a lot of magic going on. A lot of the magic is around the connectivity, because we depend on getting data in, and because of that, we try to do a lot of hard lifting and figuring out to create as many connectors as we can, so you as a client can very easily get everything up and going. But obviously, there are systems that we won't be able to cover, or some in-house systems that have very specific needs. For that, we have something that is called the Connector Studio. So in order to get there, there's up on the top a drop-down that allows you to toggle between CDP and CDP Connector Studio. Let me go to the Connector Studio and delete this connector from previous tries. And let's define a new connector. I'll do it really quick because I have 2 minutes left. A new connector will simulate a delivery system, my delivery system. And this is just a service system, and version 1, doesn't really interesting. What's interesting regarding the API connection is that we've created kind of like a mock delivery system on top of Kyma. If someone is not really familiar with it, Kyma is also an SAP product. It's also open source, and you can run it locally and utilizing Kubernetes in order to really get a cool fast, function as a service. So we did a really simple function here that sends email to simulate to simulate a delivery system. We'll just take basic authentication using username and password. And in the resources, basically here we can use OpenAPI or a Swagger file for those of you who know, but let's assume that we don't, and just define the endpoint from scratch. I can say, and again, this is a technical work, right? You need to understand how system works and what HTTP is. And we're going to define a new endpoint, a new HTTP endpoint to describe that target system that says that you need to approach in post and to the delivery path, right? Let's say that this endpoint consumes data from CDP because it takes data. We don't expect it to create events. We expect to send actions to it. And then we can say how the schema will look like. Let's say that I want to create a custom schema for this request, and we'll keep it very simple. Let's say that we have an email field in the request for this endpoint and first name. That's enough because we don't have time. And everything else is we can skip. And that's it. Like I described the target system technically, but now I can start describing it for the business. So on top of the technical resources, I can now create the definition for events or actions. So I will create a new use case, as we call it, and I will say that this is an action. The action is prioritize express delivery, right? Skipping on the delivery, and I'm basing this action on top of the endpoint that I just defined. Cool. I can see this is the schema of the action that I'm going to have. There are a lot of other configurations that you can do here. There's this really interesting mechanism of variables and the scope that you can override and how you can create events and enrich them, but we don't have time. So I'll just do next. You get a preview of the, like all the connector eventually is just a JSON definition. I'm going to publish it. I'm going to enable it. And then I'm going to do something cool, which is go to the destination, connect application, similar to what we do with WooCommerce and should have with the Marsis. And now I can find this connector, and you can see that this is something that is specifically for me. And I can connect to it. Let's call it test. And we can see that we have the configuration that we defined. And if I'll create the instance of this application, we can see that the express delivery action that I defined before is available here. And I can do the same setup that we saw before, defining the processing purposes, and expanding the model and doing the actual mapping, first name and primary email. And the cool thing is that now that this action is enabled, then we can take it in the actual customer journey. And let me show you I did a VIP segment. We have like a VIP premium. And here I defined this more interesting journey that says, well, if you just got in the VIP segment to either the silver or gold values, send an email using a Marsis, the campaign. But also check that if you specifically exist in the gold, then I also want to give you an express delivery using this system. I would have showed you everything, like mostly it's around emails being sent to the inbox, but because we're out of time, you'll have to take my word for it. Or you can try it yourself using the instructions. And that is about it. We've covered a lot in this workshop. We talked about how getting insights on anonymous users, how to convert an anonymous user to a known one, how to collect the orders for in our commerce system, and how to engage we didn't see how to engage a customer using Marsis, but we did see how we are creating custom connectivity using the Connector Studio, which is an amazing, really no-code tool to create something that is very, very technical. Thank you very much. I hope that this was interesting for you. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out. and we'll be happy to provide any info needed.